Concepts, Values and Wise Advice from the Billy Meier Contacts compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Thinking/thoughts, see also consciousness/subconscious, see also psyche, see also telepathy, see explained by the Billy Meier Contacts.
Contact Report 5.
It is a somewhat strange story, which will, however, stir up a lot of dust due to the interest of the human beings, because it sounds too fantastic for all those who have not yet discovered or developed their spiritual conscious-based thinking.
Contact Report 15.
The mainly superficial impulses gave me erroneous impressions.
So by this, you mean that these superficial impulses, as you call them, are able to cover up other things when they are still weakly developed? And with other words, this could also mean that these superficial impulses constitute the actual conscious thinking in material intellectual form, which are able to suppress the spiritual intellectual forms and make them practically impalpable and unknowable when they are not yet as strong and formed as the material intellectual form.
That is very aptly phrased, which I could not have done better.
Contact Report 31.
I'm pleased to meet you. Somewhat silly words, but what else can I say? Anera, your words are good. Don't think of them as silly. From my part, I am pleased to welcome you here. Have you groped in my thoughts? Nera, laughing. If you mean by that, have I entered into your thoughts? Then no. Your thoughts are just extremely strong, as a consequence of which they cannot be ignored.
In former times, visible proofs were necessary for the human beings of the earth in order to impart certain forms of thought to them. But by these visible proofs, they began to believe in miracles, and at other times they went astray. The present time of the earth has progressed beyond visible evidence, and the path of clear and logical reason and equally clear and logical understanding alone must be followed. Only these values count for the present time, and they are the better evidence than all those which are visible. Today, the power of consciousness, knowledge and wisdom and love are of utmost importance to be able to walk the path of evolution. In Emmanuel's time, however, it was different, for at that time the knowledge of earth humans was in every respect still very much imprisoned in those things which can be recognized by the eye and heard by the ears. At that time, this ensured that the human being who saw and heard visible evidence became aware of his power of thought and thereby progressed evolutionarily. Today, however, Earth humans have emerged from this stage, have acquired greater reason and intellect, and have become very conscious of their power of thought. So evolution demands of them that they should also seize these powers and put them to useful use. But this can truly only be done by hard work of consciousness. This means that Earth humans now live in the evolutionary stage, since they must and can work out knowledge, truth, wisdom, and love for themselves through consciousness work, without needing visible or audible proofs. But if a human being demands visible or audible proofs at this time, then it is obvious that in terms of consciousness, he or she has not yet fully climbed the level of the new age, and in certain things is still a slave to the old time. The present proofs of the earthly Aquarian age are furnished by human reason, intellect, and the infallible logic of truth. These, however, Earth humans with their adaptable form of thinking must recognize for themselves.
Contact Report 39.
I am referring to the fact that the thought powers of every single human being are capable of raising or lowering the life force of others.
Since the thinking of a life form, through the cooperation of the spirit, generates an extremely logical, thus creation-based power that is released as high-frequency swinging waves and radiations, a tremendous force is thereby generated which is capable of influencing everything. This creation-based power penetrates into everything, truly into all material life forms and all matter, in order to influence them according to their type and form. Seen as a whole, however, every single life form is of most important significance, namely in its thinking and in the powers released from it. All thoughts radiate as tremendous forces and encounter the other life forms, which draw these towards themselves like magnets. Depending on the quality and whether they are negative, positive, or well-balanced, they produce powers of the same kind with corresponding effects in the life forms intercepting them. Positive powers produce positive powers, and accordingly, negative powers produce negative powers, of course. Through the erroneous teachings and other deceptions of the religions, however, the Earth human, in the main, is able to deploy many powers that destructively influence all life forms. These destructions are based in the fact that they impair one's age as a result of erroneous teachings and wrong lifestyles, etc., so the average age lowers. The larger the gatherings of human beings are, such as in cities, the lower the average age falls, because exactly at such places, immeasurable thought energies in terms of wrong lifestyles are released and unconsciously penetrate into fellow human beings. But also animals and many materials are impaired by these destructive forces of human irrationality and, thus, are left to an early destruction, like iron, for example, which normally never rusts as quickly as what is currently the case on Earth, and which only does so because the thought-based and idea-based produced progressions are destroying the atmosphere and environment. The most dangerous storehouses of wrong, humanly produced thought-swinging wave powers, however, are precious metals, precious stones, and crystals, which often accumulate these energies in deadly doses. Thus, an Earth human may make him or herself guilty in the death of a fellow human being, whether consciously or unconsciously, when they cultivate and maintain thoughts and feelings in a negatively degenerated form and thereby releases uncontrollable destructive powers. If the Earth human wants to think and evolve correctly and in accordance with the creation, then he or she may neither move his or her thought forms in degenerated negative paths, nor in degenerated positive paths, for both are degeneracies that can produce very bad and negative consequences, thus they are contrary to the creation. Right thinking and evolving express themselves through a well-balanced and neutral wise of thinking and through right actions and right feelings, which then generate and send out identical forces through which life is produced and maintained, and an evolution that is truly appropriate for creation is followed.
Contact Report 55.
Well, I got you some names like here. Lord Meru, Burmeru, probably Aramumuru in the Andes in Peru. Then Lord Kenichihan Oxmal. Berg, this German word translates as mount or hill near Merida, Yucatan. Royal Teton in Wyoming. This may be referring to Grand Teton, and possibly a place, name the chapter in the book, Unveiled Mysteries by Godfrey Ray King, Guy Warren Ballard, and Banff in Canada, possibly the Banff Formation. Do these names mean anything to you?
Of course, these are the names of the places of the Great White Brotherhood, which fraudulently designates these places as spiritual centers, the first three being physical centers and the last being an ethereal center. But they are not the only ones, because there are several others.
Fine, but what's it all about? You're saying these places are fraudulently referred to as centers.
Such centers do not exist anywhere, neither in physical nor in etheric form. These are just fraudulent allegations by power-hungry sectarians. These places are not known to me, but it is absolutely impossible for centers to exist in this form.
Okay, but I was told that good thoughts directed there would be echoed there. How can that be explained?
Very simple. When many people concentrate their streams of thoughts on one point, they meet at the target point, form a block, and thus give a perceptible echo to each further force calling that point. So it's just fraud and self-deception through conceit.
But Svath once told me that there were natural centers like this.
Sure, namely wherever certain minerals are stored in large quantities and have a concentrating effect.
Contact Report 59.
You can still explain the function to me later, but thank my dear friend, Olga Walder, very much for this. I embrace her in thought.
Contact Report 78.
Of course, and you do not have to mention any names either, because I know exactly what is being said and by whom. Often everything is told to me again, and very often I also pick up uncontrolled thoughts. But that does not bother me anymore, because I know damn well what I have to do and what it is all about, even if several others still do not seem to know about it and have not become clear about it. Menada. Then, I have finished my mission for this time. On the other hand, we have to leave, because as my device transmits to me, thoughts are directed here, after which someone will arrive here in the next 2 minutes.
Contact Report 81.
Yesterday, Simya say, did you think of any of us towards the late afternoon?
Of course, I was interested in your meeting, which is why I observed you for some time. I could see that you were very absorbed in your response when Elsie joined you. Her thoughts rushed to you, but you did not register them because you were busy elsewhere. So I tried to draw Elsie's attention with an impulse, but apparently I did not succeed. But why do you ask?
That is why. Elsie caught an impulse that was not from me, so it must have been from you.
She often receives impulses from me because she is very receptive to them.
Contact Report 87.
Well, then I would like to send you very dear greetings to all my friends, to whom I often direct my thoughts, but unfortunately there are only very few who are able to catch them in impulsive form.
Contact Report 88.
This is possible for you through your blockade, through which you are able to prevent the release of your energy and thoughts to the outside world.
Contact Report 708.
It is an undeniable fact that in the majority of human beings on Earth, an urge, an impulse and a drive for violence, vengefulness, a desire for revenge and the desire to kill are smoldering deep underground, which can break out at any time when the opportunity presents itself, whereby even a small uncontrolled thought, emotional impulse can be reason enough for this. In the external sphere, it is other things that appear as triggers, such as alcohol, an order, drugs, jealousy, enmity, money, possessions, an unkind word, wealth, religious faith, other delusions of faith, music, hatred, envy, greed, sports enthusiasm, quarrels, bad moods, and much more.
Contact Report 834.
Human beings do not know that thoughts and words in any case set off swinging waves and influence other human beings. But this is generally the case, and therefore the attitude of human beings, apart from weapons, also creates swinging waves and causes much enmity, mischief, faith, greed, hatred, murder, revenge and retaliation as well as destruction.
Contact Report 836.
If anxiety, fear, fearfulness, worry, restlessness, or, as they also say, aftershocks, etc., arise in the human being, then this is because he or she creates a state in themselves through their thoughts and feelings, which is called a bad or stricken mental state. So let it be stated again in this respect that the human being creates this state himself or herself, and that there is really no factor that is somehow present in the form of an organ peculiar to human beings or the like. And let it be repeated again, in truth, in the human being, as in all living beings, there is no factor in the form of a psyche organ, But this is solely a state that is formed by the human being through his or her thoughts, feelings, and observing and perceiving and registering, as well as the resulting behavior.
To only consume knowledge is not the way of real learning, but the way of faith. Consequently, every Earth human has to stimulate his or her own thoughts in order to get on with what is given or has been given.
Contact Report 852.
But the majority of Earthlings, in their non-thinking, which is effectively nothing but sheer stupidity, live in completely wrong behavior. Consequently, the non-thinking human being is only a hypocritical human being, just like the believer and the opinionated. These Earthlings lead a life without any actual valuable meaning, whereby in their doubtful half-awake state they have an unconsciously effective sleep disorder, which creates for them imaginations and false memories, etc., with which they live believingly into the day and are dissatisfied.
Contact Report 857.
One can only recognize reality and its truth if one can recognize and understand what one sees, hears, and otherwise perceives in some way as reality and truth only if one effectively really and truly cultivates one's own thoughts, thoroughly analyses everything, and investigates everything in great detail. But this is not possible if the human being believes, religiously or secularly, and consequently, only an illusory thinking is possible, into which faith constantly sparks and makes it impossible to perceive and recognize reality and its truth.
Contact Report 864.
As usual, there is nothing to hide from you. How do you actually manage that you can often predict what is behind what is said? I have often noticed that you know what is being thought without me saying it. How can you do that?
You really want to know?
Yes, is it mind reading then?
No, I don't do that in principle, because they say thoughts are free and personal. But it doesn't justify, in my opinion, unconsciously intruding into the thought world of fellow human beings without permission, and not even when there is an acquired ability to do so. Thoughts, whether good or bad, are personal property, and this should not be violated or stolen, just as tangible property should not be. However, if I now know what wants to be spoken, then this is only based on close observation of the facial expressions of the person speaking, but nothing more.
But this requires an ability, which I, however, do not possess on my part.
It just has to be learned, and very intensively over many years. There is really no other way. 1940s. Feelings and the resulting emotions are universally given as the product of preceding thoughts in every life form that somehow has a thinking, whereby it is completely irrelevant how this thinking takes place. Emotions are also formed from feelings, which is particularly evident in human beings, animals, and creatures because they are capable of thinking. For thinking alone makes it possible for feelings to arise from it. Beings, mainly the human being, but also animals and creatures, develop emotions from feelings, which, in addition to behavior, also control the body to certain reactions, as well as the interaction with its own kind and all other life forms of every species and kind, but also with 1,000 different things and objects as well as situations of life and existence, the whole of nature, the planet, and all ecosystems. If the human being is analyzed in terms of his thinking and the feelings that arise from it, then emotions arise from it, and from these in turn, decisions arise that determine the behavior, and thus also the life of the human being. Depending on the good or bad nature of the feelings that arise and the emotions that result from them, action, and thus in turn, life is either worth living or detrimental to life. In any case, thoughts always precede everything. They form the central component for logic, understanding, and reason, and according to them, feelings and from them emotions and decisions, as well as behavior and action, arise. But thoughts and the feelings that arise from them, as well as the emotions that arise from them, are much more, namely, powerful evaluation systems that allow human beings to automatically assess many situations correctly, if their thoughts correspond to correctness, so that they can react quickly and also correctly. Feeling, that is to say, what human beings consciously experience as fear, freedom, joy, sadness, failure, and anger, is basically only the well-known tip of the iceberg of all that results from it. Exactly as in the case of a huge floating iceberg, where 9/10 of its volume is hidden in the water beneath it. Also in the case of thoughts, feelings, and the emotional processes arising from them, a great deal remains hidden, incomprehensible and unnoticeable to human beings, but only because, as a rule, belief-related factors play into the whole thing in a way that is subterranean and absolutely imperceptible to them. Thoughts create a complex state of feelings, as well as a conscious subjective experience, which also triggers physical processes and behavioral impulses that then play an important role. How exactly and precisely the individual components of the emotional processes are connected is given by the feelings, because of course the thoughts must precede them first, which are fundamentally the factors that ultimately cause everything. Consequently, without thoughts, there are no feelings. Just as without feelings there can be no emotions, and from these in turn no impulses, actions, and behavior can arise. Certain areas of the brain are involved in everything, generating and controlling neurobiological processes, although emotions are so complex and multifaceted that they can hardly be generated in a controlled manner. In addition, not every human being reacts in the same way to certain situations, which in itself creates a wide variety of problems in being able to classify emotions into a certain scheme. It is difficult for human beings alone, as those affected by emotions, to be able to perceive them as a whole, because they are already unable to define their feelings, and they are also unable to comprehend the origin of them, namely their thoughts that precede everything. For this reason, the human being often perceives the whole process only very diffusely. This is especially the case when the feelings go uncontrollably crazy, and no clear and striking insights are possible anymore, because they are no longer perceived correctly and are just diffuse. Feelings and emotions arising from them do bring variety into life, and every human being actually knows what thoughts and emotions arising from them are, but as a rule these cannot be defined as what they actually are in terms of their values and in terms of their effects. It is also not understood that emotions do not arise and manifest themselves before feelings, but that it is exactly the other way round, namely that certain feelings are first created out of certain thoughts, and only from these do the emotions then develop. Feelings and the resulting emotions are not always good and beautiful, positive and peaceful, but also bad, negative, and even deadly. But if the human being tries to lead life without thoughts, feelings and emotions in a strictly objective and rational way, he will never succeed, because without thoughts, without feelings and emotions, he could not live and would be as good as a dead living being. The human being would be an illusory being without compassion, and his existence would be only an illusory human being and as empty, as it would also be completely meaningless. Practically everything that makes him unique as a person would also be lost, as in the fact that his personal life story would also be null and void. The person's own emotionality, based on feelings, is a decisive and special part of the human personality, because the strong feelings and the resulting emotions have not only shaped the actions and activities of the human being in question in the past, but they also have an effect as special episodes at present and in the future, and constantly shape and change the inner identity of the human being. This is, so to speak, a personal experience that shows that the human being really does change in the course of his or her life, which may be for the good or the bad, depending on how the human being aligns himself or herself. Depending on this and on the events that occur, they are stored only faintly or particularly deeply in the memory. Emotions often enjoy a very bad reputation, especially when and by human beings who lead a negative life and consequently have unpleasant and otherwise bad thoughts. If, on the other hand, they had sensible and good thoughts, cultivated them, and were able to weigh them up in the same way, and did not make decisions irrationally and unpredictably, then they would be good and sensible people. It is undeniable that, for example, quarreling often leads to no solution of problems, just as learned things are not brought to bear. On the other hand, however, emotions, if they can develop in a correct wise, bring about a valuable evolution in the course of time, which develops in a high-quality way. This is essential for human beings to be able to make correct decisions at all, and to react to their environment in an appropriately wise manner. Correctly and thus reasonably considered, thoughts, feelings, and the resulting emotions are never a luxury, but are a complex system of aids in the life of human beings and their existence. The evolution of the human being has produced values that are essential for survival through his thoughts, feelings, and the resulting emotions, such as a mentally lightning fast and generally comprehensive evaluation system, as a result of which everything can be grasped and evaluated that falls within the range of the grasping capacity of the human being, as of all living beings in general. This system is genetically given and, with its further development, is therefore also hereditary in this wise, as it also ensures that these feelings arising from the thoughts, and these in turn produce the emotions, which then control the actions and behavior of the human beings, and indeed, depending on the nature of the same, pleasant or unpleasant. If something seems disgusting, ugly, or simply repulsive, then the already repulsive feelings will lead to the likewise repulsive emotions. If, however, the feelings of freedom, happiness, joy, love, and peace motivate the human being, then the emotions form accordingly and show the human being that it is worthwhile to use one's energy, strength, and time to nurture and cultivate good and positive thoughts in order to thereby also create good and positive feelings, from which in turn good and positive emotions form. Human beings, however, who already have bad and negative thoughts and create corresponding feelings and emotions of the same kind, should not be surprised if their lives and existence take a bad turn, or even sink into depression. If bad and believing thoughts also create corresponding feelings, then the cerebral cortex is also damaged. That is to say, important parts of the cortex, namely because the processing of emotions is carried out badly. Bad, dependent, and especially faith-based thoughts give rise to just such feelings, which in turn give rise to similar emotions. However, these are a powerful system for evaluating situations and initiating actions and behavior. And they are always very quick in their action, so that the emotional reaction often takes place before the human being is even aware of the matter and situation. This is to say nothing of even thinking about it. This is because the emotional circuits in the limbic system are able to prepare an initial assessment and evaluation of what is coming, even before the comparatively slow-working higher cortex areas in the feelings arise, which spread and evolve into the emotions that form from them. The feelings are very important and promote the human being's emotions from them, whereby the process is proved to be somewhat different from correctness than science claims. And they also show what moves and guides the human beings in life. Unfortunately, it often happens that it is particularly difficult and troublesome when the world of thoughts is full of negativity, and consequently, negative thoughts create bad and even evil feelings, such as fear and hatred as well as enmity, anger, forlornness, annoyance or shame, etc., and thus factors that are not or only very difficult to control, but often not at all. This is especially the case when the human being is treated unfairly, or feels this way, but also when something is embarrassing to him, such as a reprimand and the like, or a stupid answer, accusation, allegation, and so on. Very often, human beings do not know how to react to such stupid statements or stupid accusations, etc., so they become embarrassed, ashamed, or angry. Thoughts, the feelings that arise from them, as well as the emotions that inevitably arise from them again, are very important instruments for communication, and emotions in particular have a central function for social interaction. A large part of human communication takes place, even if often only unconsciously, through the transmission, of emotions with regard to the expressive component. That is to say, through facial expressions and gestures, that is to say, body language and tone of voice. In this way, the human being can adjust to his or her counterpart before the latter is able to express his or her concerns in words. On the other hand, even in large gatherings of people are able to perceive at lightning speed where important things are happening, and whether it is worthwhile to participate or to keep away, because danger may be imminent. The human capacity for thought and self-overestimation and self-exaltation influence all actions and behavior, and, in general, all cognitive processes of the majority of the Earth's population. This also affects all bodily functions, mainly heart rate, blood pressure, and sweating, which are controlled by the vegetative, that is to say, autonomic nervous system and hormones. Finally, through thoughts, their feelings and the emotions that arise from them, facial expressions, gestures, as well as the sound of the voice, but also the actions and behavior of human beings, whereby the emotions inevitably find a way out, especially through speech, action, and behavior, and make themselves audible through the voice and visible as a result of facial expressions and manifesting through action and behavior.